Hello my dear friends, good morning, good afternoon, good evening based on what time you are watching this video. Friends, I hope you are doing good with your health. In this video we are going to discuss about your CA final subject indirect taxation, where it is for 100 marks, but the split up of 100 marks is GST will carry your 75 marks and your customs and foreign trade policy will carry 25 marks. Friends, we are going to divide this discussion into three parts, where first we are going to discuss something about your myths and realities, specifically about your GST, and second we are going to discuss whether you can make this subject a scoring subject where you can be rest assured of your exemption in the subject, so that you are not falling in the trap of aggregate when you talk about your group 2. And third, you are going to talk about how we are going to discuss our indirect tax classes. Friends, when you talk about specifically GST, there are a lot of myths about the subject GST. Friends, GST is a very new taxation law that has came out on your 1st of July 2017. As any new thing comes up, obviously the entire attention goes there. So you will see that a lot of data is available on internet when you talk about GST, right? And any changes that comes in GST, you will find that quick update on your Facebook or Twitter account before you actually have the real updates, right? So it is so fast. We are living in this world where social network or social media will give you all information beforehand. But an important thing, can you rely on all those informations? No, lot of times when you read your Twitter handle, or a lot of times when you see your Facebook account, the person who's posting that message will never take the responsibility. No one takes the responsibility. Why no one? You even talk about your Central Board of Indirect Taxes. When they post any news on Twitter, even Government of India tells that whatever is put on Twitter is only clarification. It doesn't form part of law. So even when government is giving some clarification on its Twitter handle, even that is not part of law. Forget about anyone else. Now it becomes very, very important to be aware of what is actually correct information and what is so-called inaccurate or not so accurate information. Now friends, I'll just discuss about the few myths that are there with your subject, specifically with your subject called as GST. Customs is a very old law. So friends, when you talk about GST, when GST came out, it was understood that all the indirect taxes have merged into GST. Not true. Even after the birth of GST, there are few other indirect taxes which are still alive, right? Say for example, when you talk about your entertainment taxes by local body, or say for example your stamp duty, say for example your electricity tax, say for example your travel tax, they are all indirect taxes. They are still very much alive, right? Specifically when you talk about entertainment tax by local authority, entertainment by tax by state government is merged. It is no more there. It is merged into GST. But when you talk about entertainment tax by local authority, the third tier structure, right? You have central government, state government, local authorities. You are talking about entertainment tax by local authority. It is still very much alive. Your travel tax, air travel tax, it is still very much alive. Electricity tax, it is still very much alive. So you have a lot of indirect taxes which are still alive in form of contributing revenue to the government. They may not be so important, but they are still very much alive. And friends, there was another myth that when you talk about your excise and VAT, they are no more there. No, this statement is only partially true. Your excise duty and VAT is still alive on few notified goods. It is still very much alive. And friends, a very important thing when you talk about your GST, a lot of information that you get on your social network handle is all about GST Council. There's a body called as GST Council and GST which decides what all amendments should come inside GST. Friends, you have to understand that whenever GST Council meets, the entire media, I'm not only talking about your social media, I'm talking even about the print media and the real media, they focus on this GST Council meeting. And whenever it's released, whatever decision is taken by GST Council, on the same day you get a press release that these are all the decisions made by the GST Council. Friends, understand that the decisions taken by the GST Council and released by way of press release are not becoming law immediately. They will become law only after, if at all you are talking about section, only after the section is amended by the parliament or legislature of state. If you are talking about certain rules being amended, notifications being amended, they will become law only after the central government notifies them. There is a notification for them. Before that, the decision taken by the GST Council does not become really law. Right, obviously nothing in GST can work out without GST Council. GST Council will decide first what should happen, only then the government can make it into law. So that is true, but immediately on the date when the GST Council is deciding on a few matters, the points, the decisions taken by the GST Council are not effective from the date of the press release. They will become effective after the parliament or the state legislature when you talk about sections, or after the central government or state government when you talk about your rules and notifications, they make it effective. Before that they are not effective. So you have to understand all these things, and for which you have to understand how the law actually works. So lot of myths you have to overcome and see what is the real structure of the law. Right, friends, the next part of the discussion is all about whether your indirect taxation, both your GST and customs, is it really a scoring subject. Friends, you should ensure that when you're talking about your indirect taxation, your target should not be less than 70 plus marks. Right, rather we have a mission called as 75 plus mission when you talk about your indirect taxation, but I'm making it more realistic where you can talk easily about your 70 plus marks mission. Right, we have already seen a lot of students achieving even 80 plus marks very easily without much effort that is required. Obviously they would have put a lot of hard work, no doubt, but when you talk about the marks, there is a myth that when you talk about reaching this 80 plus marks or 90 plus marks, it is not at all possible. No, it is possible. Right, you have to do some amount of hard work and you have to do smart revision. Right, so what you have to focus is you have to make this subject as one of the subject where you're sure of your exemption, and not only sure of exemption, you focus on that 70 plus marks mission. When you focus on the 70 plus marks mission, lot of things becomes really simple for you. Right, you are now more falling in the trap of aggregate where you have a fear, you have passed in all the subject but still you are not clear with your group. That is a very sad scenario. You don't really know whether to celebrate or to be very sad because you have not cleared the group. So this will ensure one subject minimum, rather if you are talking about exemption, one subject, two subjects minimum in the group should be that where you are very much sure of the exemption. And if you are talking about 70 plus marks, at least one subject should be there in each of the group where you are very sure of 70 plus marks. And I want you guys to make this indirect taxation subject as one of the subject where you can easily target on this 70 plus marks mission. Obviously there will be lovers of your direct taxation subject, I know, but DT is an ocean, and when you compare your subject indirect tax with direct tax, you will find that IDT is way very much less compared to your direct taxation. You can easily make this subject as one of the subject where you focus on your 70 plus marks mission. And friends, another important thing that is to be discussed here is, out of your 100 marks of both GST and customs, you have 30 marks MCQs. You have 30 marks where you focus on your MCQs. Friends, understand that whenever talking about your MCQs, your target should not be less than 25 plus marks. So your target should be very clear. Out of your 100 marks, your target should be 70 plus marks. And within that 70 marks, easily you should focus on 25 plus marks in your MCQs. Now friends, now comes the question, whether MCQs are a bonus or a burden. Right, a question that I have been discussing for long time. Is it really a bonus or it is a burden? Friends, it depends on your preparation. It really depends on your preparation. If you are focused on your concepts, core concepts, then MCQs will be a real bonus for you, real bonus. The only thing that you have to understand is, gone are the days where you can buy heart and survive. No, buy hearting is ruled out. The moment ICA came with MCQs from May 2019 exams, it made one point very clear. We want only those students who are conceptually very clear about the subject. So your by-hearting is ruled out now. It is all about understanding the concepts and interpretation. Right, you should be very clear with the concepts, and if you are clear with the concepts, obviously MCQs you can always think from a bonus point of view. See, there are certain things that are very advantages in your MCQs, undoubtedly. Right, there's no negative markings. You need not write the section number, rule number, notification number, etc. etc. Your workings is not required. What is required is your answer, and obviously it consumes less time. In terms of your writing, explanation and all, it obviously consumes a very less time. So when you talk about the MCQs, these are the advantages of which are always there for all the students. Now when you talk about MCQs, a lot of questions in your MCQs can be drafted in such a way that you see the 4 options of MCQs and you find them all are seemingly correct. Right, now ICAS has come up with MCQs where they'll be giving a one question with 5 marks. 5 marks MCQs is also possible now. So when you talk about 5 marks MCQs which will be touching many areas. It will not be touching one chapter, it will be touching 3 or 4 chapters, or at times even 5 chapters. So friends, you have to be conceptually very strong. You should interconnect all those chapters. Only then you will be in a position to attend that 5 marks MCQs where they will be touching 3 to 4 chapters. Don't be surprised even if they touch 5 to 6 chapters. You should be conceptually strong and you should be having that interpretation where you know how to interlink the provision. So interlinkage of provision at final level is very much required. You should have that understanding of interlinking the provisions. Right, and if you look at that MCQ, if you are gone wrong with the reading of the question, then all those 5 questions of that master question where it is of 5 marks MCQs, you will be finding it as a burden. So what is the need of the day is you should be sure of your concepts, and MCQs ensures that you are conceptually strong, point number 1. Second point, you have seen each and every corner of the subject. Obviously when you are doing your revision, smart revision, exam day revision, you cannot touch all the aspects. But once you have gone through the classes, at the time of discussion in the classes, you should have touched all the aspects of the subject, so that when you are seeing that MCQ, you find that it is a real bonus. I want you guys to look at MCQ as a bonus, and your mission should not be less than 25 plus marks in your MCQs. Out of 30 marks, you should target at that 25 plus marks, so that it is only a matter of 15 marks for you to test that pass, and you should never focus on pass in indirect taxation. You should focus on 70 plus marks mission. What happens is, the moment you write your MCQs and you write 25 marks, if you are very sure of that 25 marks, or say 27 marks are pakka right, that confidence will add up when you are working out your practical questions. You will feel yourself, that confidence will add up, that will fetch you more than minimum 5 marks when you are attending the other practical questions. Why? You can plan your time properly. Now that confidence will be reflected where your mind will work so fast that you will be interconnecting many concepts that you have learned long back during the classroom discussion. So you will find all these things coming automatically. Alright. Now the third part that we are going to discuss in our video is about the classes. Friends, when you talk about our classes, the classes will be fully focused on your concepts. We are going to focus on all your concepts. We are going to focus on your concepts in such a way that you also discuss about interpretation. Final is all about interpretation. So we'll be discussing about various interpretation and why one interpretation is more logical, why other interpretation is not so logical. Right, and we are going to follow an approach called as 360 degrees approach. So we are going to follow an approach called as 360 degrees approach, where whenever we are discussing a concept, we will discuss that concept with 360 degrees approach. We will see each part of that concept. We cannot leave a concept at one hand. When you see a question, at that point of time, the question may address only one area of the concept, but our focus will be touching all the possible scenarios of that concept, and that is the reason we are going to call it as 360 degrees approach. So our focus will be that 360 degrees approach, which means that any type of question that you get in exam hall should not be a news to you, should not be a new question to you. Right, all your research and development, friends, you have to do when you are preparing for your exams. Your R&D should never happen in exam hall, and we are going to ensure that all your R&D we are going to take care when you are going to do the discussion about the subject. Exam hall is never the right place for you guys to do your R&D, right? Many of us do R&D, right? Sitting in the exam hall, we think that, okay, is this the answer? No, this should be the answer. Oh, I have read this provision there. No, that interlinking of provisions in this 360 degrees approach, obviously you are going to interlink the provisions as well. So you are going to even interconnect the provisions. Multiple chapters you are going to discuss within one question. So when you do that, you should be very clear. And that is the reason we have named this approach as 360 degrees approach, where you will see all the sides of a concept. You will connect multiple concepts. You will interlink the chapters so that you have a clarity. You should not be doing your research and development sitting inside the exam hall. All that should happen before you are entering the exam hall. That should happen at the time of preparation. Friends, we are going to discuss our classes in that way that we are going to discuss around 750 conceptual questions. 750 conceptual questions. And before that, I would like to give the breakup. Our discussion will be for almost about 170 hours, where you can keep this as 110 hours will be all about your discussion of the concepts and the provisions, and 60 hours will be discussion of all your examples, and friends, we are calling it as your conceptual examples. We are again coining a new word where you are not calling it as examples, we are calling it as conceptual examples, because while discussing conceptual example, my friends, we will be focusing at one or few concepts at one point of time. Initially we will be focusing on one concept at a time, and later point of time we will be interlinking 2 or 3 concepts in the same example. So focus will be at one concept at one point of time and seeing the entire 360 degrees approach. And slowly we'll see few questions where the concepts are interconnected. We'll be discussing about interconnection of the concepts, where we'll have a question about interconnection of the multiple chapters as well. So that will be coming when you talk about few conceptual examples. So our discussion initially basically will be on one concept at one point of time. And when you talk about your exam questions, they are all nothing but merger of different concepts, right? So I will be even training you to ensure that you are in a position to interconnect all the concepts. And for that we have a Q bank by the name Train Your Brain, where for final we have almost around 700 questions. Now these are not conceptual questions, these are all practical questions, they are exam questions, right? You need not refer your ICI Q bank where you are talking about May 2018 exams, November 2018 exams, May 2019, November 2019, whether it is your mock test paper or your revision test paper or your exam paper, all those questions will be there in the Q bank along with our own questions. We will have our own questions along with all the ICI questions properly arranged as per the logical sequence. And the difference is, it is not just a compilation of ICI questions, no. Your ICI questions, old ICI questions may not be valid today, amendments would have been there. So the answers are updated, point number 1. Point number 2, the presentation of ICA question is different for the same type of questions in different areas, and that we find it very difficult. What we have done is, if at all it is the same type of question, ICA question, we have made sure that the presentation of that type of question is in the same manner. So you may find the question of ICI the same as it is there in your ICA Q bank, but the answers, the presentation will be totally different of all the ICA questions. And for many of the questions which are outdated, the question will be valid but the answer is updated now. We would have updated those questions. So you'll have a Train Your Brain module where you'll be focusing on your question bank. That will be the only module that you should have or handle when you're talking about your revision, smart revision or exam day revision. Exam day revision should not be with the help of your main modules, it should be only with the help of your Train Your Brain question bank, Q bank. We call it as a master Q bank. And friends, the last thing that I wanted to share is, when you're talking about all these discussion, we'll be having 2 multicolor modules for the entire discussion. We'll be having 2 multicolors modules for this entire discussion. The first multicolor module will be only about GST. The second multicolor module will contain part of it GST and part of it customs. And friends, this multicolor module is just not like that. Multicoloring is given. Each and every color will have a significance. That's a proper color coding that is there. Now just to show a glimpse of this multicolor module, we'll take a demo chapter so that you understand how the discussion will be there. Each chapter will start with a bird's eye view, where we'll be discussing about the sections, rules, notification in that chapter. So you'll always start with the bird's eye view, where you'll be very clear with all the sections, rule numbers, notification that is there in the chapter. Friends, that will serve 2 purposes. First, you know what is the discussion that is going to happen in that chapter. Second, you are no more having that fear factor of your section number, rule number, notification number. Should I remember that? Yes, you should remember that. At final level, you are required to remember section number, rule number, notification number for sure. So that will serve dual purposes. The main purpose is making sure that you know what is the discussion that is going to happen. There will be a proper agenda before we start a chapter. And the second important thing is your fear of section number, rule number, remembering that will go away. And friends, each of the discussion will have a proper meaning. Say for example, if you see this particular thing, wherever you talk about main heading, you will be finding that main heading in blue shade, dark blue shade with white font. So all your main headings will always be given in your dark blue shade, and all the definitions throughout your two multicolor modules will be finding your definition means that will be given in the green shade. And when you talk about say your subheadings, all your subheadings will always be given. Main heading will always be there in blue shade, subheading will always be there in red shade. So subheading means there will be, if at all there is any subheadings, you will always find that in red shade, and all your content and the main content and the sub content you will be finding in pink shade and orange shade. So when you talk about your content and the sub content, you will always find that in proper shades, either pink shade or orange shade. And friends, more importantly, when you are talking about your circulars, we will be discussing n number of circulars, right? Lot of circulars in GST and few circulars in customs as well. All those circulars, the moment you see a circular, you will find them in purple shade. And circulars, though they are not part of law, but we have a lot of circulars there. And when you are revising, I am sure that you are not going to touch the circulars. Why? Once you are very clear with the concepts and we have discussed the circulars during the classroom discussion, you will find that the circulars will never tell anything new. They are not part of law. They are not binding on the CC. It will only clarify the position of the law. And at times, if the circulars are bad in law, we will discuss why that circular is bad in law. Right? There will be an author's note. You will find lot of author's note where will be telling that why you should not follow the circular, which is not for your exam purposes, but for a practical side. If you find something illogical, there will be a proper author's note which is accompanying the text. And friends, we were discussing around 750 plus conceptual examples, and all your conceptual examples will be in a plain shade, white shade. So when you talk about conceptual examples, every time when you see your conceptual examples, you will find them only in plain white shade. So the moment you see plain white shade, when you are revising directly, you can come at conceptual examples. You will all find them in a plain white shade. So here you will find lot of conceptual examples given in plain white shade. And circulars, the moment you talk about circulars, they will be always given in the purple shade. So you will know what are we discussing about. So whenever you see a particular color, you will know, okay, this color stands for what coding, and accordingly your brain will tell that, okay, if at all directly you want to see the examples, that you can skip that and you can focus on the conceptual examples. We have drafted conceptual examples in such a way that at least 80% of the discussion of the concepts is there in the examples. You cannot find all the concepts in form of examples, but at least 70 to 80% of the discussion, you will find a lot of examples. See, you will find a lot of examples here where all your concepts are converted to examples, and examples will be in tick mark, cross mark format. Most of the cases, the example will be in form of yes or no, tick mark or cross mark format, and you have even the number examples where you will be dealing with numbers and the dates as well. So when you talk about all these things, you know what you are going to read. Now friends, you may ask, why this multicolored text? Friends, just answer this basic question. If at all you are going to any place and if at all you are finding a newspaper and a magazine, a multicolor magazine, assuming that it has got the same content, your brain will always direct your hand to only go and collect the magazine. I am talking about a scenario where it has got the same content, right? The instruction given by the brain will always be collect the multicolor magazine, and your hand will only go towards your multicolor magazine. Obviously it has got a huge impact. And friends, during the classroom discussion you will not find it difficult, but when you are revising and all, you should know what to revise, what not to revise, right? You should know the proper color coding. Say for example, I said that 80% is the concepts. At times few chapters like your input tax credit, which is the main chapter of your GST, where valuation chapter or your time of supply chapter or your e-way bill chapter, there are a lot of chapters where 100% of the concepts are there in form of conceptual examples. Other chapters, 70 to 80% concepts will be there in form of conceptual examples, and there are few chapters where an entire chapter will be in form of conceptual examples. So directly you can take that conceptual example, see that, complete it, right? So that will be very helpful when you are talking about your revision and your smart revision and your exam day revision. So that will really serve the purpose, right friends? So when you talk about this entire discussion, I hope you found this video helpful. Thank you.